Welcome everybody. See a lot of familiar names out there. Excited to be with you and give you a very, very sort of high-level summary of the regulatory schemes in the tri-state area, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. And obviously there's way too much to cover in 1 hour, and I actually want to cut my presentation short to leave enough time for your questions, because I think we're already in this new market, and so everybody is out there working on applications or involved in some capacity and is starting to have specific questions. So I definitely want to leave enough time to cover any specific questions and answer them to the extent I can. So just by way of introduction, my name is Duncan Delano. I'm an attorney at Emerge Law Group. Emerge Law Group is a full-service business firm that has been servicing the cannabis industry for over 7 years, headquartered in Portland, Oregon, with offices in Washington, California, and now New York and New Jersey. And very excited to be here. My esteemed colleague Allegra is monitoring the chat and is taking your questions. If any of your questions is so brilliant and timely that it warrants interrupting me, she's gonna text me, and I'll answer it then. But otherwise, we'll do Q&A after I sort of go through the slides and give a very brief summary of the programs in each state. And obviously, with so much to cover, today I'm really limiting my scope to the types of licenses available in each state, and sort of a brief summary of what you can do with each of those licenses, any relevant caps on the number of licenses, and important dates. When are these licenses available? And how does the license application process work? Are there open windows that close? Is it rolling? Those sort of things. And also really wanted to give a summary of the social equity and small business provisions. There's a lot of prioritization built into the application process in all 3 states to benefit social equity applicants, and that I'm using that term sort of very loosely to define a number of groups that we'll get into more detail on, but talk about sort of the prioritization baked into each application. So now I am going to take you off the Jersey shore. I apologize and put up a boring white slide presentation, but we'll get through that and get back to the beach for Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me. Okay. All right. Allegra, can you see that? Do you see my presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to start with important dates. Important dates in New Jersey to start. New Jersey is very active, as many of you know. Applications for Class 1 cultivator and Class 2 manufacturer licenses opened on December 15th. That application is still open. As of January 21st, one of the recent CRC meetings, 326 total applications had been submitted. Most of those, 83%, were in the form of conditional licenses. Just a little fun fact. So most people are trying to figure out how to make the conditional license process work in New Jersey. The Class 5 retailer license applications will open on March 15th. And there's no date been set for the other 3 license types: wholesaler, distributor, or delivery. In fact, the CRC has indicated that they plan to release additional regulations focusing on those license types. The existing regulations do have some provisions covering those activities, but they're going to be fleshed out with additional regulations. So stay tuned for when we get dates for those licenses and further regulations. And as I note there at the bottom, licenses are accepted on a rolling basis. The CRC does have discretion to shut down applications for any license class in its discretion based on market forces, supply and demand forces. Okay, Connecticut. Connecticut is also up and running. This month, they opened applications for disproportionately impacted area cultivators. Those are cultivators operating in disproportionately impacted areas, which we'll talk more about what that means in the social equity slide. But that is open for 90 days, and that is one of the few license types that is not issued by lottery in Connecticut. So if you qualify, those are open right now. Then retailer lottery has also been held. That started for social equity applicants. Once all of the social equity licenses, there's 6 available, are filled, they'll have a non-social equity lottery to issue an additional 6 to applicants who are not social equity. Although if you're a social equity applicant and you're not selected in the social equity lottery, you can be submitted in the general lottery and have a second chance. And then you see the dates for the other licenses as they're coming on. And so this is a very sort of closed system where they will issue a set number of licenses, all by lottery. And as you'll see later, the disproportionately impacted area, it's all about where you've lived recently or where you grew up in Connecticut. So that factors whether you're a social equity lottery participant. If you are selected in the lottery, you have 60 days to put together an application. We'll get more into what you need to submit just for the lottery a bit later. Okay, New York. New York is still, we're still in a holding pattern for New York. Regulations have not been issued yet. The legislation was signed in March of last year. The Cannabis Control Board, which oversees the Office of Cannabis Management, was fully appointed in the fall of last year, so they are currently drafting regulations. Word on the street is that regulations will come out in April or May, and the initial regulations, possibly June. It might come in 1 or 2 sets, it sounds like. And then they hope to get the comment period wrapped up quickly and the rules finalized. They still hope to have applications open at the end of this year, but I think it's fairly probable that it'll slip into early 2023 when license applications will be available. However, there's a little update in New York, which I believe we will talk about on the slide down the road, where existing hemp farmers can apply to switch to adult use cannabis. So that's currently that's a bill currently working its way through the legislature, and I think if it just awaits Governor Hochul's signature, so that will allow some existing hemp farmers to get a head start. Okay, types of licenses. This is back to New Jersey. There's testing labs. Interestingly, of those 336 license applications that had been submitted as of the end of last month, only 3 of those were for testing labs. So if you want to get in the testing lab business, there seems to still be some opportunity in New Jersey. Class 1 is cultivators. There's a limit of 37 non-micro business licenses, so 37 standard cultivator licenses can be issued until February of next year. So about a year from now, that cap will go away. And as the CRC has made clear in recent meetings, that cap of 37 does not apply to the number of license applications they'll approve. It doesn't apply to the number of conditional license applications they'll approve, or the number of annual license applications that they will approve. It only applies to when the business is ready to be operational and has issued their license. They've gotten the final inspection done and have been issued their license. So the CRC can only issue 37 of those licenses before February 23rd of next year. So given the delays, this is just sort of a little editorializing here. Given the delays in the application review of cultivator and manufacturer licenses thus far with the CRC, they were supposed to review conditional license applications within 30 days, but recently stated that will be closer to 90 days. That's what they're targeting. So if you sort of factor it out, by the time these initial standard cultivation license applications are reviewed and approved, and those applicants get up and running and get their final inspection, that's going to be pretty close to that February deadline as it is. So there's not going to be as much of a first mover advantage, I think, as we originally thought when the statute came out, when the bill was passed. And it really will be, for those 37 licenses, a race to operate, because the CRC will just wait to be notified by applicants that have been approved that their site is ready to be operational and they can do the final inspection. So it's going to be a race to get that final inspection. Class 2 is manufacturer license. These are the processors of cannabis flower into all the various products that you see on the marketplace, except no food, edibles, or perishables yet. The CRC intends to add those following some coordination with the food safety agencies, but no official word on when that will be added in. Right now, you're limited to tablets, chewable lozenges, which are sort of like boring gummies, tinctures, lotions, topicals, but no edibles for food. They didn't have time to coordinate with this food safety agency yet. So class 3 wholesaler, class 4 distributor, class 5 retailer. For the retailers, you can add an on-site consumption endorsement. So the on-site consumption is not a separate license in New Jersey. It's an endorsement that you can get on the retailer license. And only, I think it's about 8 or 9, 7, somewhere between 7 or 9. There's a few more that have opted in recently. 7 to 9 municipalities in New Jersey have opted in to on-site consumptions, mostly the larger cities. But I'm sure more will opt in as we go. And then class 6 delivery license. And with that class 6 delivery license, you can sort of act as the customer facing entity by having your own website and app and processing the sales from the customer. You're just basically fulfilling the orders from the dispensary, the retailers that you work with. But you can have that sort of customer-facing brand company. And also retailers can engage in delivery of their own product. Okay, types of licenses in Connecticut. There's sort of 14 different types of license and registration in Connecticut. Some of them are more sort of like the owners. You need an ownership registration. But here are the types. Cultivator has to be at least 15,000 square feet, and then the micro cultivator, it can be between 2,000 and 10,000 square feet. Then that Connecticut has a bit more robust licensing on the food and consumable products. They have a food and beverage manufacturer license specific to, food and beverage products. I think that's pretty cool. I'm particularly excited about where infused beverages go, and so I'm glad to see that Connecticut is, getting out in front of that. Let's see what else warrants further discussion here. I think that's about it. Then, this is continued. This is the sort of the personnel. So these aren't really license types. It's more personnel that require registration, background check, etc. Any owner of 5% or more, key employees in managerial roles, and any employees who have access to the product and everything need to be registered. Then moving on to New York, there are a number of licenses in New York that, similar to New Jersey, they're very limited on vertical integration. So you cannot hold sort of, cultivator on down to retailer licenses, with the exception of the micro business. The micro business allows you to cultivate, and then whatever you cultivate, you can process, distribute, deliver it, and sell that product. Then there's a couple other interesting licenses. I like seeing that the on-site consumption license is a separate license. So in New Jersey, an on-site consumption lounge has to be right next to and attached to a retail dispensary. In New York, on the other hand, it can be a standalone establishment, and you can sell cannabis on site to be consumed on site, and you can have up to 3 locations. And retailer is the same. You can have up to 3 locations. New Jersey only allows for 1 location with a license. And then the other one I think is fairly interesting is the cooperative license, and that is what it sounds like. It's a license held by a cooperative, where it's sort of the cooperative model of ownership of one owner, one vote. It's all very very democratic, and I think is targeted towards sort of farmer co-ops where a group of farms can get together and sort of have increased bargaining power, shared resources when they form a co-op, which they do for reasons other than getting cannabis licenses. But I think that's an interesting option, especially for the cultivators. New York also has a nursery license for producing and selling clones, seeds, and immature plants. And then there's a method for existing medical operators to get registered to convert to adult use through the registered organization license program. We're very much waiting on details for New York when the regulations come out. The statute itself gives sort of a very thin skeleton of the program, and it needs to be fleshed out for sure. And now getting into the application process. In New Jersey, there are 2 ways to do it: conditional license or annual license. Conditional license requires sorry, just technical difficulty here. I'm being told my layout is not great, and I apologize.
I think you need to end the slideshow and just start it instead of doing present. Does that make sense?
Okay.
End slideshow up there on the top right.
Sorry, bear with me, folks.
Do you see the one right? Keep going to your left, right there. End slideshow. Do you see? Oh no, you can't see.
There you go.
Just do from current slide, I think.
Better?
No.
All right. That's all right. So the conditions to apply as a conditional license applicant is anyone who has at least 5% ownership and exercises control over the day-to-day operations of the business can have an adjusted gross income of only $200,000 if filing singly or $400,000 if filing jointly. And that applies to the year before you submit your application, to the tax year before you submit your application. And the benefits are you don't need to secure property or municipal approval in order to submit. There's far fewer documents you need to submit, and you don't need to demonstrate experience in the industry or in a similarly highly regulated industry. The annual license is a one-step application process where you need everything up front, including site control and industry experience, which you can hire for if you don't have it. Obviously, you can get anything with money. And then in Connecticut, it's what I've described. There's the lottery system, so there's a fixed number of lotteries. They ensure that they first ensure that you qualify as social equity. If you're trying to enter that lottery, you need to submit a number of documents showing how you qualify, and other just profile information on the company and the applicant. And if you are selected, you have 60 days to put together an application on the state's forms. And then same for non-social equity lottery. If you're selected, you have 60 days to put together your application. So it's very easy to get in, to at least throw your hat in the ring in Connecticut. And if you get that winning ticket, you build a team and an application. So it's a kind of a good system for less well capitalized applicants who just want to see if they have a shot. And once you get that winning lottery ticket, you'll likely be able to attract investment, partnership opportunities, etc. And so there in Connecticut, half the licenses will go to social equity applicants. So New York, the application process is very much not out there yet. We're waiting on regs. I mentioned that switch to the conditional license applications for existing hemp farmers. They will be able to apply for a conditional license to switch into adult use cannabis, and that legislation is coming, but to my knowledge hasn't yet been signed. Here's a list of everything you need in New Jersey to submit for your application. It's quite an extensive list of documents. Interesting, speaking with some of my West Coast colleagues about the extensive SOPs and operating plans and everything that's required in New Jersey. Lots of very technical documents that does the CRC really have the expertise to be reviewing and scoring cultivation SOPs and detailed cannabis manufacturing SOPs? I don't know. Will they continue to require these detailed documents? I think that is a good question and remains to be seen. States out west that have gone through the legalization process and initially required sort of these very extensive operating documents have stopped asking for them because they realize they don't want to read them all, and they also don't really have the expertise. So yeah, we'll see. But right now there's a lot that you have to pull together. And I'll just mention the labor peace agreement and collective bargaining agreement is not required for micro businesses, but is required for all other businesses. You do not need it to submit the conditional license application if you're going for a non-micro business as a conditional license applicant, but you will need it when you submit the conditional conversion application, conditional license conversion application. I mentioned this a little bit. Here's some of the documents you need in order to submit for a to submit into the lottery in Connecticut. And then here are the fees to submit for the lottery. You know, some are cheap and some are quite pricey. You know, I guess they gotta take their hand out somewhere. So yeah, application materials required in New York is also very much up in the air. The statute lists a number of criteria that the Cannabis Control Board may consider. I've listed just a few of them here, but really what will matter is when the regs come out and when any like RFA or notice of applications comes out. Those really set forth the detailed application requirements. So like if you're applying in New Jersey, the main document you want to be looking at is the notice of application acceptance. That's where it's a 35 some odd page document available on the CRC's website. That's where it really has everything you need to submit. Okay, so in New Jersey, very busy slide, but this is sort of word for word the prioritization in this order of New Jersey applications. So as you can see, the first 5 bullet points, those are all conditional. So all conditional license applications are reviewed before all annual license applications, and that includes the conditional license conversion application. So once you submit your conditional license application, if it gets approved, you have 120 days to submit your conditional license conversion application. And when you do submit that conditional license conversion application, your priority, whatever your priority level gets reset, so you get bumped back up to the front of the line. So it really does benefit applicants to apply as conditional license applicants. Really, the best way to do it, if you could thread the needle, based on your property and everything, is to go for a conditional license. And as soon as the day after that is issued, you submit your conditional conversion application. That's sort of the way to maintain the top priority that you can based on your ownership structure. And just walking through a few of these, I'll get into the definitions in the next couple slides before we wrap up. But the bonus points one here is for applicants who have owners who have been residents of New Jersey for at least 5 years. And then in Connecticut, it's sort of social equity and then non-social equity is the priority. That the lotteries start with social equity and then go to non-social equity. So social equity is based on income and then whether you've lived in a disproportionately impacted area for either 5 of the past 10 years or 9 of your first 18 years. Sorry, a little typo there. But so if you grew up in a disproportionately impacted area or you've lived recently in one, then you qualify. And in New York, they have a goal of issuing 50% of all licenses under the adult use program to social equity applicants. Those include people with past marijuana convictions and people who with relatives with marijuana convictions, people who lived in economically distressed areas, or where crime has been enforced, sort of the war on drugs, crime has been enforced in a discriminatory manner. Low income areas, people applying from low income areas, and then minority and women owned businesses, disabled veterans, and financially economically distressed farmers. So that a little bit more. They have more social equity categories than New Jersey, and Connecticut for that matter, I guess. So here are some of the social equity in small business and local business considerations in New Jersey. Micro businesses, which are limited to 2,500 square foot premises. And 2,400 square feet of grow space, and 1,000 plants a month, and 1,000 pounds of cannabis product a month, and must be 100% New Jersey owned. There's a goal that 10% of each class of license must be a micro business, and a quarter. That's actually a statutory requirement. And a quarter of all licenses must be micro business. So they are trying to carve out some small business market share. 35% have to be conditional, but 83% of the applications have been conditional, so don't have to worry about satisfying that one. They want 30%, this is a goal, 30% of licenses to be issued to diversely owned businesses, which includes businesses 51% owned by minorities, women, or disabled veterans. And they set a breakdown there of wanting 15% to be minorities and 15% combined to be disabled veterans and women businesses. Those ones for the diversely owned businesses, those are goals, not requirements. Another goal of 25% of licenses being issued to impact zone businesses. Let's see. I guess that's it. I think there's a few definitions that I wanted to speak about, specifically in New Jersey. So social equity applicants, I'll come back and just talk to you guys and then open up the floor. And I know I have some questions waiting.
Are you looking for social equity stuff in the New Jersey thing you wrote?
I'm looking for. That's all right. Okay, so going back to the highest priorities in New Jersey, a social equity applicant. Those are owned by 51% owned by someone with a marijuana conviction, or one or more people who have lived in an economically disadvantaged area for 5 out of the last 10 years. In those economically disadvantaged areas, there's a list. It's by zip code, and there's a list on CRC's website. Impact zones are based on municipalities and this is the third level of priority after diversely owned. Impact zones are based on median income, unemployment rates, crime indices, a various number of factors which you don't need to worry about because there's also a list on the CRC's website of all the impact zones. The way to qualify for an impact zone business, there's a lot of ways to qualify based on the ownership of the company or where you hire people from or where you locate the business. So if you don't qualify for social equity or diversely owned business, let me know because you can definitely qualify for impact zone. We can figure that out for you. So there's no reason you need to go down to that fourth level of priority, which is the bonus points level for having a New Jersey an owner be a New Jersey resident for at least 5 years. So that is the last thing I wanted to share on sort of a very brief overview of dates, license types, and social equity prioritization. Actually, one more thing I wanted to add, which came out recently, and the Cannabis Control Board in New York has been talking about it a bit, is there's a $200 million fund being put together to actually finance social equity applicants in New York, and that will be funded through a combination of public funding through tax and fees on the licensing program in New York. But since those will take a while to accumulate, there will also be private investment funding that fund, so that some of those dollars will be available early in the process, so social equity aren't left out in the cold.